Hello and welcome to Tuesday's Tips and Tales. Last week was a very lengthy tale, over an hour long, but I hope you enjoyed it if you got to the end. It was all about my trip to Grasse, with some tips thrown in there for good measure. But this week it's a tip, it's going to be short, and it's about diluting oils in perfumery. There's several reasons which I'm going to get into, but the reason I felt the need to give you this tip is I've noticed a lot of advice lately from in quotes, experts on YouTube and TikTok, especially one of them who's done a very good job actually of marketing himself before he's even launched his perfumes, and he is a self-proclaimed self-taught perfumer. But he gives away also a book, which is a downloadable book teaching you about perfumery. It's just very basic, and it's very nice of him to have done that. And to give that away. And of course, it's a lead magnet in order to get your attention about his brand, which is also another good way of marketing. But he tells people in this booklet to dilute all of their oils to 10%. Now, whilst that might be the easiest way, it's definitely not the right way. And this is what happens when people learn perfumery from forums and blogs and from people that, it's like the blind leading the blind, people that don't really know what to do, and then they take the advice of somebody like this particular person, and then the next person that reads that tells another person, and so on and so on, and it goes on like that. It's like Chinese whispers. And there are many successful self-taught perfumers. I'm not saying that you have to be classically trained at the Grasse Institute of Perfumery or Sipka or Givaudan. But what I am saying is that you do need some kind of formal training. So once you get into, learning about perfumery, it's all very well going on forums and blogs, and you can find out information for free. But if you really want to invest in a business, then you need to do some investing in your training. So for instance, there's a chef on YouTube. He's called Chef Jean-Pierre. Now that's like me watching a few of his videos and then calling myself a chef. Or even if I wanted to teach other people how to cook, doing a few YouTube videos and teaching them, all I'm doing is just copying his recipes. So that's not going to make me into a real creator. But what he does have is he's French, Italian, based in America. I'm not sure where, but he has a school, a culinary school, and people go there. So they're going to have more credibility when it comes to them either creating food for people to eat, perhaps in a restaurant or a cafe, or if they want to teach other people how to do it. So what I'm saying is, I'm not trying to promote my classes here, but I want to teach you how to dilute perfumes and how to do it correctly. And so I've said it's going to be short. I'm trying to keep it short. So let's get into it right now. It's very confusing diluting oils, but the truth is you should be diluting all of your oils, because there's another expert on YouTube that tells you have to dilute only the materials that are powerful or the ones that are difficult to work with, like benzoin, for instance. And that's also not true. Why do we dilute materials in perfumery? Number one, it's cost effective. Diluting your oils in alcohol saves you money because you're not experimenting with neat oils. And especially when some of these oils range from 10 to 30,000 euros a kilo, that's a lot of money that you're experimenting with. That's number one. Number two is material efficiency. So it prevents wastage of precious materials during experiments. And number three is it gives you an idea of the final scent. Alcohol actually helps to lift individual notes in a fragrance, which gives you a better impression of what the final fragrance is going to smell like. If you dilute it in oil, for instance, those notes are not going to be lifted like they are in alcohol. And contrary to lots of popular belief, is you shouldn't dilute your entire collection at 10%. Some of these oils need to be diluted at 10%, the majority of them actually, but others at 1%. For instance, absolutes and aldehydes, very powerful oils. Clove is an incredibly powerful oil, so this needs to be diluted at 1%. But some of them, even 5%, like rose essential oil, at 10%, it's too strong, or you're actually spending a lot of money, because rose essential oil is a fortune. So to do it at 10%, you're still using a lot of raw material, because I'm assuming that if you use rose essential oil, you can't use a lot of it in the final product anyway, because of EU regulations and IFRA. But 1%, it's too weak. So you can use a 5%, and a 5% is an exception to the rule. And some things are even diluted at 0.1%, for instance, aldehyde C11, because it's incredibly powerful. But some people dilute aldehyde C11 at 1%. But if you're unsure which oils need which concentration, I have a course. It's called Weighing and Dilution. It's at thescentacademy.com. And this is what I'm talking about now about dilution is what I learned at the Grass Institute of Perfumery from, a tutor that, was at Tagasako and Givaudan for 27 years. She's got now a 30-year career history in perfumery. So she knows what she's talking about, and they have to stick to a curriculum. So what I'm telling you is correct. But regarding dilutions, I've had questions on my YouTube channel. If you go to my YouTube channel, The Scent Academy, and it's at by Melanie Jane. Now, some people have said to me, well, isn't a 10% dilution too strong for a final product? And I was really confused. I said, well, I don't understand. What are you talking about? 10% in a final product. And he said, well, if I'm going to be using, benzoin, let's go back to that, for instance, and clove, and I'm going to be doing it at 10% and 1%, isn't that dilution going to be too strong for my final products? And this is, again, misinformation online. Your diluted collection is purely for experimentation. It's not for creating the finished product. And I've seen people doing this, and I want to tear my hair out. Honestly, I've seen them creating collections, experimenting with them, making a blend, and then using that final blend and using that diluted collection to create a final product. And that's not why you do it. That's not how you do it, and it's not why. Now, going back to Chef Jean-Pierre, he teaches people why. And if you know the why, you know the how. And this is how I teach people. So why, I've just told you why we dilute oils, but the how is we're diluting them for experimenting only. Once you're satisfied with an experiment with your diluted oils, you're now going to create a neat blend with undiluted raw materials and leave that neat blend to macerate. Like when you make a stew, it always tastes better the next day. Well, in perfumery, you have to do this with your neat oils. So if you've made an experiment and it's got 5 to 20 different oils in there and you're happy with your diluted experiment, you now need to do the math, because it's going to be different, the quantity that you put in there, whether you've diluted them at 10% or 1%. Now, I assure you, if you do take any of my courses about this, then it's incredibly easy to follow. It sounds like it's not rocket science, but it sounds a bit confusing now on a podcast, because you can't see what I'm doing. But what you can do is then, like I just said, use your neat oils to create your final blend. And I would recommend doing a small final blend, leaving it to macerate, just to make sure that you're absolutely happy with this neat blend. And then make a bigger batch. If you are 100% and very confident in what you've done with your experiment, then you can by all means go on to create a big batch of the neat oil. And remember, you're going to be then diluting this later. So leave it to macerate, I would say, for a period of 4 to 6 weeks. That is really the industry norm. And you will leave it, that neat blend, for this period of time, because it helps all the oils to marry together and come together. Because what you don't want to do is create a blend of neat oils, then bam, next day or even a few hours later, dilute it in alcohol, and then bam, a couple of days later, you packaged it and sent it out to your customers. Because what's going to happen? I'm going to tell you in my next podcast. But only after this process will you dilute it in alcohol to create the final product. Now, I learnt this process from seasoned master perfumers at the Grass Institute of Perfumery, like I said before, and not on social media or forums. If you really want to learn the right yet simple way of creating your own fabulous and even feel-good fragrances, then you can check out my Natural Perfumery Diploma. That is on my website at thescentacademy.com. It's CPD accredited. You can also follow my fragrant journey on social media, which is Facebook and YouTube. if you just type in The Scent Academy on either of those channels. I'd love it if you could subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm not kidding. When I reach 2,000 subscribers, I'm going to host a Ask Me Anything video. So if you are listening to this and you want to ask me a question that I will answer in my video once I reach 2,000 subscribers on YouTube, then you can shoot me an email. It's M for Melanie, J for Jane, N for Nightingale, MJN at bymelaniejane.com. bymelaniejane, all one word, .com. So send me an email, send me a question that you have, and I will basically answer your question, as long as it's got anything to do with fragrance, perfumery, my fragrant journey so far, my scent studio in France, any of my flea market finds, my perfume bottle collection, aromatherapy, natural skincare. So you can basically get hold of me and ask me any questions, and I will feature it on my YouTube when I get 2,000 subscribers. I'm really excited about that. In the next tip, that's going to be tinier than this one, I'm going to be talking about maceration that I've just talked about very briefly, but I'm going to go a little bit more in depth. So that's it on Tuesday's tips and tales. And some of them, they're going to be tales, and they're going to be a little bit personal, talking about my own journey in the UK, what brought me into aromatherapy, into that amazing world, and then transitioning into natural perfumery, and then transitioning into teaching, and then podcasting, and then writing. It will be a probably 10-parter because it's a really long journey that I've been on since 1997. So it's a really long time. I can't even do the math, but it's been a really long time, nearly 30 years. So that's it. I'll see you next time on Tuesday's Tips and Tales. A bientôt.